Welcome back for the second video on the DR2 Dreieckrechner flight computer by Siegfried Knemeyer. In the first part of this video, we talked about how to do a basic wind triangle on this two-sided device. And in this video, we'll focus just on the logarithmic side and some of the calculations that can be done here. So the first thing we'll take a look at will be the gauge markings. So like any flight computer, this computer does certain conversions. So we have a red arrow here and an unmarked arrow over here, and those are for converting between knots and kilometers per hour. So if we set 150 knots underneath the red arrow, then we'll be able to read our kilometers per hour under this arrow that's over here, which looks like it's 260, 270, 275, about 277 kilometers per hour. At the same time, we can do the reverse conversion, and we can do it without moving anything, thanks to the fact that somebody, whoever owned this device before me, had scratched in their own gauge marking. And if you look at later DR2 computers, you'll see that this became an actual gauge marking that was added to the device. Underneath, it's hard to tell here, but it is etched in SM, which in German translates to sea mile or nautical miles. So given 150 nautical miles per hour, if we pretend that that's what the red arrow is pointing to, we can find our nautical miles by going back to this gauge mark that's right here, just after 32 minutes. So that looks to be a value of just under 81 knots. So we'll call it 80.6 nautical miles per hour. Now, this flight computer also has another etched in gauge marking, which is right here, MS. This is for converting between kilometers per hour and meters per second. And like this gauge marking right here, it was added to later devices. So if we take the same problem again, 150 kilometers per hour, convert that into meters per second, well, we would just read at this gauge marking right here and end up with an answer of about 41.6 meters per second. So those were the gauge markings that were present here on the DR2, at least this version of the DR2. The next type of problem that I wanted to look at was a true airspeed problem. So on the outer ring of the sine scale here, we've got some interesting markings for calculating our true airspeed from our indicated airspeed. So we'll just punch these into the computer in order to calculate our true airspeed. 300 kilometers per hour is our indicated airspeed. That's represented right here by the 300. Remember that red arc represented common airspeeds at the time. Across from 300 kilometers per hour, we set our temperature. And here we have two colors, red for positive and blue for below zero or freezing. And so I've set -10 over my 300 kilometers per hour, which is my indicated airspeed. And then in order to get my true airspeed, what I do is I take my cursor here and I align it over my altitude, which is specified in kilometers. So my altitude is 2 kilometers, and therefore my true airspeed can be read at the cursor line, and it looks like it's about 325 kilometers per hour. So that's how you could use the true airspeed function on the DR2. Now, the last thing that I wanted to talk about in this video was just how streamlined this design was for calculating the basic information that's required on a flight log. And what I mean by that is, when it comes to actually flying and navigating an airplane, we know in advance often the true course that we need to fly and the distance that we need to fly on each leg. But what we have to figure out before we actually go and fly is the heading that we need to correct for the wind to fly over that true course, and the amount of time that we have to fly along that true course in order to make it a certain distance. And the DR2 has this really nice pin that's here at the 1 hour mark. And when the cursor is locked into that pin, well, then the cursor and the inner scale move together without affecting the outer scale. And you'll see why in just a second, why this is a really nice streamlined modification for quickly finding the answer to these problems. So I'll talk through the intermediate steps as we do leg 1, and then to show just how fast this can be, I'll just blitz through leg 2. So let's start on the back side of the device. We set up our true course, which is 090, so I point the airplane there. And I set our wind, which is 150, 50 kilometers per hour. I set that here on 150, like we did in the last video. And that has a relative wind angle of 60 degrees. I then flip the device over, and I set my true airspeed, 350 kilometers per hour, across from my relative wind angle, which was 60 degrees, calculated from the back side. So that's aligned right there. To find my wind correction angle, I look across from 50 kilometers, which is right here, and I see that I've got a wind correction angle of 7 degrees. And because of the direction of the wind, that's from the right, so that's my true heading of 097. And in order to find my time, what I need to do is take my 60 degrees up here and subtract the wind correction angle. So subtract those 7 degrees that we just found, which puts us at an angle of 053. So underneath the cursor, we could read our ground speed, which would be a little over 320 kilometers per hour, but we actually don't even have to, because we moved both the cursor and the inner timescale at the same time. We can actually just get our answer directly, which is how long is it going to take us to fly 160 kilometers per hour? Across from 160 kilometers, we have 30 minutes. So by having this pin here at the 60-minute mark, it saves us time so that by the time we figured out our ground speed, we're actually able to directly read how much time it will take to fly a certain distance. So again, to show how nice and streamlined this is, I'll just go through the second leg of this flight and show how quick we can get these answers. So we point the airplane where we want to go, which is a heading of 120. We set the wind where it comes from, which is 150, 30-degree relative wind angle. I set 30 degrees over my true airspeed here of 350. Across from the wind speed, I find the wind correction angle, which is 4 degrees. 30 minus 4 gives us an angle of 26. And across from 100 kilometers, I get my, so I should put in my correction here, 124. And across from 100 kilometers, we get the time required to fly, which is almost 20 minutes, so just under 20 minutes. So you can see how quickly this computer can tackle the most important navigation problems that we have. So that covers all of the features that are here on this side of the DR2, with one exception, which is this very special pin that is here at 7 minutes. Why is the cursor able to lock in to 7 minutes? What's so important about 7 minutes? Well, if you'd like to find out, you'll have to join us for the third video on the DR2, where we talk all about that special marking, that special pin on the Dreieckrechner. Thanks for watching.